Penny Hardaway and the Memphis Tigers played FAU for the second time, looking for a sweep after a 28-point beatdown the first time. In the first half, we get a lot of good hustle play by FAU, but they just jumpstart the break. Dainja, the big fella, running the break like the Showtime Lakers. Show me something, big fella. Got me feeling mystical. Dainja. But the Owls had the Talons out early. Quick swing, Caleb Glenn going to hit a three. He had 15 for FAU, and they were up 16-12 early. Memphis closes the half pretty strong. Colby Rogers, threes for tees. He had two to close the half. Memphis led 37-32 at the break. That's when Dainja takes over. Call him Windex, cleaning the glass. 9 of the first 11 Tiger points of the second half. That one going to get the crowd on their feet, including our production assistant, Kiara. She was in the building. She loves it. And then it's P.J. Haggerty's turn. Blow by, tough bucket. Give me that. Then we go next possession. Cookies in the front court. That's going to be another bucket. Let's just go home. Haggerty and Dainja put up 22 points apiece. Memphis wins at 84-65. The win secures a first and second round bye in the AAC tournament. Penny Hardaway put this one on the back of his big man, Dainja.
Yeah, it just shows me that he cares. You know, that's the one thing about this team that I do understand, that these guys care. They want to come back and do better. Obviously, he knew he let himself down because he has so much pride in the last game, kind of let the offense dictate his defense. And he came back this week hungrier, worked really hard on his game all week, and was ready for today's game.
You know, I want to win, so, I'm just leaving it out on the floor. You know, every game, I just want to make that my mentality, just leaving it out there. I think the last game I only had 1 rebound, so, I kind of took that a little personal with myself.
Takes it personal with himself. Gabe, my guy, what'd you think about this one and what the Tigers were able to do? I think they beat FAU almost by 30 the first time. You get them by 19 this go-around. Looks like they had FAU's number, and it seems like they are pretty focused here in this last stretch of the season.
Yeah, that loss against Wichita State definitely opened their eyes, it feels like. This type of performance is exactly what the folks at the net, Ken Palm, Bart Torvik, this is what they want to see. They want to see you just whoop up on teams that are inferior to you. And, 18 games of a conference schedule, it's hard to, run the table. But Tigers have had a couple of these performances. I thought this second half was certainly, top 3, top 5 performance of the year for this team. And that's saying something, considering all the wins they have. I mean, look at the AP top 15 right now. There's 4 teams they've played. They've beaten 3 of them. So they're 3-1 against AP top 15 teams. I do have to give a lot of credit to Penny Hardaway. I know we've done this before, given him a lot of credit, but I think he has this year found a way to push the right buttons at the right time, as opposed to years past. I'll go to the offseason even. Firing all the coaches, bringing in new coaches. That's definitely worked out. Tyreek Smith, before the year, it was going to be a distraction. He wanted more NIL money. He wanted his payments thin. Penny says, you know what, let's cut that off now. I don't have time for this. You get into the season, and P.J. Carter is struggling, and he pulls P.J. Carter aside and says, dude, I know you're happy to be here, but I want you to start playing well. And P.J. Carter took it upon himself to start playing well. And I thought in that first half, we saw something completely different that Penny has never really done this year. He's done it in years past, probably to middling results, but this year he hasn't done it. His starters didn't have energy.
No juice.
They came out flat, and he brought in a completely, basically, line switch like in hockey. And look at those guys. They started rolling. Dink Yates got some minutes. A guy that he gave a scholarship to earlier in the year that was a walk-on from the area. But I thought he pressed the right buttons, got the reserves in. They played well, and then it sort of woke up the starters for the second half. And then you saw P.J. Haggerty, Dainja do what P.J. Haggerty and Dainja do. So I have to give a lot of credit to Penny Hardaway for this win, because I think he pushed the right buttons at the right times.
I think you're right. He's been pushing the right buttons kind of all season, and this really was the latest iteration of it when I'm sitting there on the floor, on the baseline, and I'm seeing who's coming in as I think it's 11-7 or something like that. FAU has that early lead, and I'm looking, I'm like, We're bringing in Dink Yates, Devarian Yates, who, to your point, is a junior college transfer. You get Dante Harris in there early, who's a defensive specialist, not necessarily a scorer. Baraka Okoji's kind of the same way. And you're like, okay, this is definitely a Sunday 1 o'clock tip-off kind of game.
Right.
But it was interesting listening to the players talk about talk about getting sat after the fact. PJ Haggerty and Dain both say something to the effect of, yeah, it made me realize like I really had to get engaged into what's happening in the game. We came out flat. We didn't have the energy that we should have. And ultimately, the group that came in there had energy, played well, especially defensively, never took the lead, but it definitely woke up all those guys that had to sit for a little while. Again, Dain and PJ, they just kind of, it feels like they just kind of decide when they want to take over a ball game. They're like, okay, we played around with this team a little too long. FAU, we know, is not a team that can really hold up with them, although Penny Hardaway was giving FAU their flowers for their several performances before then. But the Tigers really changed the dynamic of the game early in that second half. I mean, we talked about it in that read there. Dain having 9 of 11 of those first second half points. I think he's taken it upon himself to really put the team on his back, and they play so well when they're able to go inside out the way they had the last couple of games.
And in this game, obviously, Dain, Dainja, PJ Haggerty, your big two really combined for 44. So obviously, this is a great time to talk about this. It's a great time to talk about this. But this team, I know we have a few more games that we have to watch, and then the AAC tournament. But regardless of where this team's seated, and I know there's a lot of contention about that topic in general, this is a team no one wants to see in the tournament. I don't care who you are. Obviously, they've beaten some of the best teams in the country. I mentioned 3-1 against the AP Top 15. But, as opposed to years past, this team can beat you in just so many different ways. Obviously, they like to run. They can get out and run. They forced 11 turnovers against FAU, had 24 points off those turnovers. They had a bunch of fast break points. They can shoot the 3-ball relatively well. Their defense is very good. But here's the thing that is different. And I guess we could throw it back to 2022. With DeAndre Williams and Kendrick Davis kind of for this, but I think they're probably deeper 1 through 5 than that team was. In the half court, they can go score at will. They have 2 guys in particular, in Dain Dainja and PJ Haggerty. It doesn't really matter. We can get late to a shot clock. You could have some problems setting up an offense. But those guys, just give them the ball, let them go cook, and they can make your half-court offense work. They're erasers in that way on the offensive end. They erase all the problems you have most games and most times down the floor. I think what they've been able to do with Penny Hardaway's old style, being able to create that consistently, and then adding this sort of issue for other teams of a half-court offense that can score at will for most of the game. I think that's going to be very, very helpful by the time they get to the tournament, because similar to the NBA playoffs, once you get into the NCAA tournament, people start to crack down, try to screw down their defensive strategies. They try to throw different things at you. I think this team is capable of handling just about everything thrown at them in the half court.
Yeah, I think the problem that the Tigers had last year, they were almost a little too David Jones dependent, especially when they got into the tournament. And he turned the ball over a lot. And when he wasn't scoring well, they typically collectively struggled to score well, and I don't think you have that issue with this particular Memphis Tigers team because, to your point, Dain Dainja and more specifically, PJ Haggerty can go get to the basket anytime he wants. He's great at getting to the foul line, although he didn't shoot a foul shot in the last game, which was surprising, which is wild, right? You're wondering if he's getting officiated a little differently than he has been in the past, but he can go get a bucket really whenever he has to or wants to. And Dain Dainja is so effective in that low block, in that mid post, and in the high post. He really doesn't have any deficiencies in his game. He may not be a jump shooter in the way that we've seen a lot of bigs kind of become more of the stretch 4, stretch 5s of the world and have a little shot to their game. But he can pass out of the double team extremely well. Yep. He can score with his back to the basket. and he makes things really difficult as a defense because there's so many shooters around him that you can't afford to double team him too much because then you've got a Tyrese Hunter, a Colby Rogers, a PJ Haggerty, PJ Carter, who are all be able to shoot the three at a pretty high clip, and that makes things really difficult. To your Gabe, you've already brought up the AAC tournament. We only got 4 games left until that happens. I'm wondering if there's anybody that scares you in the AAC. Let's take a listen to Dainja real quick as he talks about this very question. Like, does any team make you worry a little bit in the tourney?
The way a team can get up for us and then play a whole different way when they play somebody else is just enough. Like, so it's every team. You know, I feel like every team's going to get up for us because we're Memphis and, you know, it's Penny Hardaway here. I feel like every team is just going to have a little bit more juice. So I kind of look at every team like, okay, like it's a tough game.
Only 4 games left on the schedule before we jump into Dallas. Gabe, we know what happened to the Tigers in the tourney last year. Does any team they could face worry you?
God, what a tragic end last year. My gosh.
It was like, watching a car wreck in slow motion last year.
That was it's like that whole game against Wichita State happened in slow motion. That was so bad last year. And I think everybody predicted it. But I do want to start with these last 4 games. Circle the UAB game at UAB. That's going to be one where everyone in that crowd's going to be hyped up. So they have to get through that test. I'm not really worried about the other 3 games, although they could prove me wrong along the way. Now, in the tournament, we're talking about neutral site. So I think there's one team that worries me, and that's North Texas. North Texas is second in this conference. They have 3 losses. And the only reason I say that is because North Texas has this uncanny ability. One, defensively, they're very good. But 2, they have this great ability to play at their own pace. They dictate pace against whoever they're playing. And we know what that pace is going to be. Very slow, very methodical, very gross on the offensive end. They're going to muddy it up on the defensive end. They're going to make you play in the half court. They're going to switch up their looks on the defensive end constantly. So that's the one matchup that does give me a little bit of pause. And if you'll remember earlier in the year, North Texas did visit FedEx Forum, and that was a 4-point game, very close. And there was some question as to if Memphis was actually going to get that done, going to go win that game. That game was up in the air more than a lot of the games I've seen in the American Athletic Conference that Memphis has played in so far. So North Texas is, I think, genuinely the one team that gives me pause. I think Florida Atlantic, they have their number. UAB, I would worry if you're on the road against UAB. I'm not necessarily worried about them on a neutral site. You beat them by 23 at home. I think you get up for that game. And also you have the Dain, Dainja, Yaxel, Lindeborg back and forth on Twitter. I think that I don't think Memphis is going to get surprised emotionally. I think they will be emotionally charged for that game. So, yeah, I just look at North Texas as the one team that does give me a little bit of pause because their style is so much different than what you're seeing game in, game out.
Yeah, that's fair. I think anytime you jump into a team who is very different stylistically than anybody else you face on your schedule, it's almost like with the Memphis Tigers in football. When they got to go play,
triple option.
They got to go play Army.
Perfect.
They got to play Navy, and you're talking about that triple option. You're preparing for that defense or preparing for that triple option offense as a defense. And it doesn't matter how much you prepare for it. It's kind of wacky. It's weird. It's unnatural. And I think that a lot of the teams that North Texas tends to face gets caught up in that because they do play so slow, and they're okay with playing slow, and they're not going to allow you to speed them up. And it seems like even a Tigers team that likes to switch up the pace of the game when they put in the full court press, and Penny Hardaway's done a great job of implementing that at strategic points of games. I can see a world where, that game being so slow, maybe you get off to a bit of a slow start offensively. Maybe you're not getting to the free throw line like you might want to. Your three-pointers may not be hidden. That could be a game that could really get into a slog if you're a Memphis Tiger and Memphis Tigers fan. To me, I think Wichita State, for whatever reason, plays Memphis tough pretty much every time. And it's not because I think we understand that Wichita State is an inferior team, but something about what they got going on over there in Kansas, they play Memphis tough every single time. We've seen it twice this year, the overtime loss. The other game wasn't as close, But then we saw what they were able to do in the NCAA tournament, kind of caught Memphis flat-footed. I would not be surprised if that game is close again, if they end up being in a matchup in the AAC tournament. But to your point, Gabe, I think North Texas is probably the one that gives me the most pause, simply because they are the Navy and Army of AAC basketball.
Yes, 100%. I love that comparison. I love that comparison because also they have to play that way. Not only did they play that way before, but they have to play that way. They lost so much talent this offseason. Everybody transferred out. So they have to find a way to be different than everybody else.